Welcome to Live Impact News. This evening it is 7:30. We're going to be here for the next hour and a half. I'm Julie Kay. We want to get started with something that you missed earlier in the day as we were in our newscast, which is President Donald Trump meeting with oil executives. This comes, of course, after the takeover of Venezuela. They've, of course, captured the president and his wife, and they are going to be on trial here in the United States under charges. So we're going to get to that. This is, of course, really interesting given that context. Take a listen to what President Trump had to say.
Which ones, but the biggest and the strongest, and they said that was very impressive. They're all impressed. But today I'm delighted to welcome almost 24 of the biggest and most respected oil and gas executives in the world to the White House. It's an honor to be with them. We have many others that were not able to get in. I said if we had a ballroom, we'd have over 1,000 people. Everybody wanted. I never knew your industry was that big. I never knew you had that many people in your industry. But here we are. And if you, in fact, if you look, come to think of it, well, I got to look at this myself. Wow. What a view. This is the door to the ballroom. What a job. Unusual time to look, but I figure we might as well do it. If the fake news would like to go back and take a look, you can, but you'll see a very big foundation that's moving. We're ahead of schedule in the ballroom and under budget. It's going to be, I don't think there'll be anything like it in the world, actually. I think it's going to be the best. We won from, this is, as you know, our biggest room, which would seat 100 for dinner, maybe, if you're lucky, if you're nice and tight. And the ballroom will seat many, and it'll also take care of the inauguration with bulletproof glass, drone-proof ceilings, and everything else, unfortunately, that today you need. So we're going to discuss how these great American companies can help rapidly rebuild Venezuela's dilapidated oil industry and bring millions of barrels of oil production to benefit the United States, the people of Venezuela, and the entire world. And yesterday, the number is 30 million barrels. I can't even, is that a correct number? 30 million barrels. You hear that, Peter? Of oil was given to us by Venezuela. That's a lot of oil. It's about $4 billion worth, and it's on its way to the United States right now. And we want to thank Venezuela for that. And we're working very well with them, obviously, or they wouldn't have been so generous. But they respect us again. They didn't respect us at all before. So that's money that goes to the United States. Some will go to Venezuela. And some will go to the oil companies, but not that, because that's already been extracted. So you're not getting any of that. But when you start extracting, you'll get. But it's tremendous reserves, among the biggest in the world. Some people say it is the biggest in the world. And we're going to be working with Venezuela. We're going to be making the decision as to which oil companies are going to go in, that we're going to allow to go in. Going to cut a deal with the companies. We'll probably do that today or very shortly thereafter with Chris and Doug. And we're dealing with the country, so we're empowered to make that deal. And you have total safety, total security. One of the reasons you couldn't go in is you had no guarantees, you had no security, but now you have total security. It's a whole different Venezuela, and Venezuela is going to be very successful. And the people of the United States are going to be big beneficiaries because we're going to be extracting, numbers of, in terms of oil, like few people have ever seen, actually. So you're dealing with us directly. You're not dealing with Venezuela at all. We don't want you to deal with Venezuela. Let me thank Vice President J.D. Vance, who's doing a fantastic job. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, likewise a fantastic job. I have good people. I like them better than my first group. But we had a great, despite that, we had a great first term. We had some great people there too, by the way. But we had a great first term. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country in the first term, but this is blowing it away. And you haven't seen anything yet. Everyone's been shocked by the numbers, 5.4% GDP. And that's despite the fact that we were badly hurt by the Democrat shutdown, of which they'd like to see if they could shut it down again. Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum was fantastic. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, recommended by Doug as being the greatest oil man anywhere in the world, because I wanted Doug for that job, energy, and Doug said, no, sir, there's a man named Chris Wright. I said, who the hell is Chris Wright? He said he's the most talented oil man anywhere in the world. I doubt you can get him, because typically oil men make a lot of money, and women. They make a lot of money, but Chris came. You took one of the greatest salary cuts probably in history, Chris. Right? But he's a fantastic person, loves our country, and many other important members of this team. And I want to thank them for their efforts. As you know, last week the United States Armed Forces performed one of the most spectacular military operations in American history, apprehending the outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro for his crimes against the United States, crimes for which he has now been indicted and is in federal court awaiting trial. And he killed many people, millions of people, actually, and allowed jails, prisons, mental institutions, insane asylums, drug dealers, drug addicts to pour into our country totally unchecked because of Sleepy Joe Biden's policy of open borders, the stupidest thing I've ever seen. We're getting them all out. The departure of Maduro makes it possible an incredible future for both nations, Venezuela and the United States, in which we will more closely integrate the economies of two major energy powers in the Western Hemisphere. Energy coming out of Venezuela was very small. One of the things the United States gets out of this will be even lower energy prices. We have people now getting gasoline for $1.99, $1.96, $1.95, $1.92 yesterday, somebody. And it used to be $3.50, $4, $5 a gallon. Think of that, $1.99. Decades ago, the United States built Venezuela's oil industry at tremendous expense with American skill, technology, know-how, and dollars. But those assets were stolen from us, and we had presidents who did nothing about it. This president is much different than your other presidents. They did nothing about it. They stole it. Some of the people in this room were a little bit younger when that happened, but not that much younger. It wasn't that long ago. But they stole our assets like we were babies, and the United States did absolutely nothing about it. So now we're doing everything about it. Now we're doing 500% about it, but it's a long time after the act took place. So they stole from us, and it was taken by socialists and communists at the time, and Venezuela was going bad, really bad. And as much oil as they have, they're producing almost nothing, which is just a system. So we're really, if you look at it, we're taking back what was taken from us. They took our oil industry. We built that entire oil industry. Started a long time ago, but they took it, and they were very ungracious to this country, but now they're being very nice. American companies will have the opportunity to rebuild Venezuela's rotting energy infrastructure and eventually increase oil production to levels never, ever seen before. When you add Venezuela and the United States together, we have 55% of the oil in the world. The United States is number one. We have them drilling. Drill, baby, drill was my campaign, and Doug and Chris, I think we're setting records on drilling right now and taking oil without Venezuela. That's how we're getting the oil prices down. The plan is for them to spend, meaning our giant oil companies will be spending at least $100 billion of their money, not the government's money. They don't need government money. But they need government protection and need government security that when they spend all this money, it's going to be there so they get their money back and make a very nice return. The plan is for them to spend at least $100 billion to rebuild the capacity and the infrastructure necessary. Venezuela has also agreed that the United States will immediately begin refining and selling up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan crude oil, which will continue indefinitely. We're all set to do it. We have the refining capacity. It was actually based very much on the Venezuelan oil, which is a heavy oil, very good oil, great oil. It's fantastic for certain things like asphalt roads, the best there is in the world for asphalt roads and other things. All of the companies here today are going to be treasured partners in bringing the nation of Venezuela back to life, restoring its economy, and generating great wealth for their companies and for their people, and also great wealth for the American people, and tremendous wealth for the companies that are going in. The companies that are going in, and if you don't want to go in, just let me know, because I got 25 people that aren't here today that are willing to take your place. So I just want to thank, these are people that I either know or I know of by reading lots of business magazines and journals and papers. These are the greatest oil people anywhere in the world. Harold Hamm, I see, is here. Harold, you know, there's a story about Harold Hamm that he can look at a piece of land, put a straw into the land, and oil pours out. Is that true about you? Whereas some of you guys have to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to find that oil, so we can't let that story be true. But they say Harold puts a straw into the land, and oil comes gushing out. So you're not a big R&D person, are you, huh? He's called instinct for oil. Now, he's got other problems, but we won't talk about those problems. But he's been a great supporter of mine for a long time, haven't you, Harold? So congratulations. But we have, and I think Harold would agree, we have the greatest oil men and women anywhere in the world sitting in this room right now. And we have a lot of people that will be back to see us sometime next week. We're going to have another meeting for another group. But we're going to do this very quickly. We can have this done almost immediately. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'd like to invite Vice President Vance to say a few words, followed by Secretaries Rubio, Bergam, and Wright. And then we'll have a few words from representatives that are here and to discuss their ideas, a couple of them. We have Chevron, which has been, where's Chevron? Where are you?
Yeah, far right.
No, I thought you'd have a better location. You were the only one that was there for all that. I used to call you and say, what the hell is going on with Venezuela? He stuck it out. I don't know if you made money or not, but you stuck it out. I got to give you a lot of credit for that. Mark Nelson, thank you very much. Exxon CEO Darren Woods. Darren, thank you very much. How's Exxon doing? Okay?
All right, thank you very much.
They'll do a lot better now, won't they? Huh? Exxon's been amazing. It's been an amazing company. And ConocoPhillips CEO Ryan Lance, thank you very much. So you guys could say something, and then we'll take some questions from the press. And if anybody else would like to speak, we'll have you speak. We have all the time in the world. This is a big subject. This is massive wealth. And more importantly than massive wealth, it leads to lower taxes and a lot of jobs for Americans and for Venezuelans, but for Americans in this case. And I just, again, appreciate you all being here. And I'd like to ask JD to say a few words, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to everybody for being here. You know, as a Marine Corps veteran for my entire lifetime, presidents, and let's be honest, they were Democrats and Republicans, would send the American military to far-off places. They would get us involved in these endless quagmires. They would lose hundreds or thousands of American lives, and the American people would get nothing out of these misadventures. And now you have an American president who's empowered the American military to stop the flow of drugs into our country and to ensure that we, as opposed to our adversaries, control one of the great energy reserves that exists anywhere in the entire world, and he did it without losing a single American life in the process. It was an amazing operation. It's going to make our country richer. It's going to make our country more powerful. It's going to make our country safer, and it's going to lead to the decline, the further decline of drug overdose deaths in the United States of America. An amazing thing, and I'm happy to be here to talk about how we can make it an even bigger and better operation for the American people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Marco?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I think this is a reminder that everything this president does, everything President Trump does, is with the American people in mind. It was not in the national interest or national security of the United States and of our people to have in our own hemisphere a country not just with vast energy reserves, but controlled by an indicted narco-trafficker who flooded our country with illegal immigration, including drug gang members, openly cooperated with drug gangs, and by the way, stole the wealth of that country to fund a repressive regime and also benefit adversaries such as Iran. All of that is now changing. As part of this process, the first phase, of course, is the phase we're in now, which is the stabilization phase. We did not want to see destabilization in the country. We're working very cooperatively with the interim authorities there to provide a market for the sale of the wealth of Venezuela in such a way that benefits the people, both of the United States but also the people of Venezuela. And as a reminder to everyone, the President announced this just 2 days ago.
Doing a fantastic job, and we appreciate it. Everybody appreciates it.
All right, you've been listening into just a little bit ago when President Donald Trump, as well as other officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, were speaking to oil executives about this transition of power in Venezuela, especially what that means for their oil reserves. As we wait for that transition of power to take place in their government, it sounds like at this point the U.S. is now in charge of it at this point, as Maduro is in U.S. custody. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and we're going to get right back out to this conversation. Welcome back to Live Impact News, just past 7:45 here on WCNC Plus, and we want to get right back out to the big news of the day, which is Venezuela. So this is that conversation earlier, continuing on with President Trump and oil executives in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, what we've seen in the last week is leadership matters and credibility matters. Venezuelan oil has been sanctioned for many years, and the oil just flew, those sanctions were not enforced. That oil just floated out to trafficked by bad actors of the world. That resources weren't gone to a central place. The corruption and decline of Venezuela has been a crisis for the people of Venezuela, and as Secretary Rubio said, massive spillover effects in the United States, in crime, in drugs, in kidnappings, and in taking a huge resource base and making it not exploited, not developed. The whole world is a poorer, less opportunity-rich place because of that. When you have materials underground, they've been underground for 1 million years. That does not make them a resource. That does not make them valuable for your country, your people, or the world. They only become a resource with technology, with capital, with rule of law, and a system of governance that encourages the harvesting of those resources to make the better world. And we see here the dramatic contrast between the United States, which may have less oil underground than Venezuela. We have 20 times the production of Venezuela, 20 times the impact of human betterment, massively better quality of living here in the United States. That was at risk under the last administration. We've seen a lot of attacks on the energy that makes the world go round. President Trump's election has removed those risks, has embraced reality about how the world is energized, and we are at record production of oil in the United States, record production in natural gas in the United States. We've seen a meaningful decline in gasoline prices, diesel prices, travel prices because of jet fuel. And now President Trump is taking the genius of a different way to try to solve a 25-year festering problem in Venezuela, that all the traditional things have not worked. But ordering both a tremendous military operation to remove the heads of a criminal organization masquerading as a government, and then to use the power of our military, not to fire bullets, but to stop the flow of Venezuelan oil to the world, immediately gave us leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela and has allowed us to be in this position today where the actions of this government can massively improve Venezuela for the better, and the bigger impact is to massively improve the quality of life, affordability, safety, and security of the United States. Very proud to be here. And we'll turn it over to Mark Nelson, who's the vice chairman of Chevron. Chevron has been in Venezuela for over 100 years, continuously. Mike Wirth, the CEO, had a knee replacement recently. He's not here. Mark is a tremendous leader in our industry, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Secretary Wright. Again, I'll send Mike Wirth's regrets. He really wanted to be here, Mr. President.
Great guy.
On his behalf, I have 3 very quick thank yous and an assurance I'd like to provide to you all. The first thank you, Mr. President, is to you. It's thank you for convening this gathering. It's thank you for your leadership, and thank you for continuing to keep American energy domination in the forefront. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
The second thank you actually is to the Cabinet. So Secretary Rubio, Secretary Berg, and Secretary Wright, your ability and commitment to continue to engage with the parties around the table to keep the world working is greatly appreciated. So thank you for that. And the final thank you actually would go to our Venezuelan employees of Chevron. They have been working tirelessly to operate safely, protect the environment in country, and their dedication and skill will help us in this next chapter. And finally, I'll close with the assurance. For more than a century, Chevron has been a part of Venezuela's past. We are certainly committed to its present, and we very much look forward as a proud American company to help it build a better future. And so, Mr. President, thank you for your leadership.
And you really suffered there. You stuck it out. A lot of people left. A lot of big companies left. Many of the people sitting at this table left because of the safety risk and other risks. But you stuck it out. I give you credit for that. Sometimes it was hard. I remember 6 months ago I told you to stay, just stay. Things are going to happen, you'll be very happy. I didn't know they were going to happen this fast or this conclusively. One thing I think everyone has to know is that if we didn't do this, China or Russia would have done it. And if China or Russia were a next-door neighbor, because essentially this is not around the other parts of the world so far away where you fly in an airplane for 24 hours before you get there. This is sort of a next-door neighbor if you think about it. And I told China and I told Russia, we get along with you very well, we like you very much, we don't want you there, not going to be there. And if we didn't do this, China would have been there and Russia would have been there. Maybe they both would have been there together, but they're not going to be there now. One thing I will tell them, and I will tell you, that we are open for business. China can buy all the oil they want from us there or in the United States. Russia can get all the oil they need from us, and they do like oil, even though they produce a lot of it. But China and Russia and everybody else is able to go, and we'll be open for business almost immediately. I have a feeling the $100 million will be spent $100 billion will be spent very, very rapidly by these very big, powerful, and rich companies, and I think they're going to be able to rebuild the infrastructure. And I hope it's going to be brand new as opposed to a rehab, because I know the tremendous difference between the new and the not so new in your industry. The new is much more beautiful, much better in every way, and actually much smaller. It's like everything else, gets smaller and stronger. It's a combination of smaller, better, and stronger. So I hope you're going to build all brand new stuff, rip out the old crap that's been there for so many years, and do it the right way. You're going to be there a long time. If we make a deal, you're going to be there a long time. If we don't make a deal, you won't be there at all. It's, sort of interesting. But again, China and Russia would have been there if we didn't do this. And the other thing people ask about the second wave, I don't think it's going to be necessary. We have an armada, a giant armada like nobody's ever seen in that part of the world. And it's stationed off the coast. And we are getting along so well with the people that are involved in representing Venezuela that I don't think we're going to have any I don't think it's going to be necessary to do the second wave. We were planning on a second wave, but the first wave was so powerful and so good and so strong. And frankly, the people in the country, they did the right thing. They were smart. They did the right thing. They didn't want to go through a second wave. But we've got a tremendous number of the most powerful ships in the world right there. I don't think we're going to have to use that. I'm happy to say that. I don't think we're going to have to use that at all. If I could ask Chevron, you did a great job. I want to thank you. And ExxonMobil, if you would say a few words, and then followed by Conoco, great companies, massive companies, great companies. Exxon, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity, frankly, for the entire industry to show up and provide a perspective. Frankly, we've been kind of unresponsive to the press regarding Venezuela. I guess today's the opportunity to address the press directly with respect to a number of questions that have been asked of ExxonMobil. First and foremost, obviously, is the interest that we have in Venezuela. And I think, the way I would position that, I think one of the reasons why we see many of the industry players here is we're in a depletion business for a product that is in great demand and will be in demand for many, many, many decades to come. And as a depletion business, the biggest challenge we have is finding resources. There's an opportunity in Venezuela with all the resources there. Is we don't have that challenge of finding. We have the challenge of developing those resources. So I think it's in the best interest of these companies and, frankly, society as a whole for the industry to be interested in understanding what the opportunity here represents. I'll just share a philosophy that ExxonMobil has when we enter countries, because we do business all around the world in a number of different regimes. We take a very long-term perspective. The investments that we make span decades and decades, so we do not go into any opportunity with a short-term mindset. And there's a value proposition that we have to meet. It has to be a win-win-win proposition. And obviously, it has to be a win for the company and our shareholders and to generate a return for the investments that we make. It has to be a win for the government. The resources are an important source of revenue that help support the people of the places that we do business. And it has to be a win for the people. We have to be wanted there and to be a good neighbor. And those three things ensure a stable, long-term platform for the large investments that we make for the long term. With respect to Venezuela in particular, we have a very long history in Venezuela. In fact, we first got into Venezuela back in the 1940s. We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. And so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections, and there has to be a change to the hydrocarbon laws in the country. We're confident that with this administration and President Trump working hand in hand with the Venezuelan government, that those changes can be put in place. And with respect to the Venezuelan government, that perspective we don't have a view on. We haven't talked to the Venezuelan government, and obviously we have yet to assess the people's perspective with respect to ExxonMobil entering the country. In the short term, there are things that can be done while the longer-term issues are being worked. For us, we haven't been in the country for almost 20 years. We think it's absolutely critical in the short term that we get a technical team in place to assess the current state of the industry and the assets, to understand what would be involved to help the people of Venezuela get production back on the market. With the invitation of the Venezuelan government and with appropriate security guarantees, we are ready to put a team on the ground there. We also have a integrated set of capabilities from production to refining to trading, and I think we can be of assistance to getting the Venezuelan crude to market and realizing a market price to help again with the financial situation in Venezuela. So those are my short-term perspective that I have. I'd say maybe close with a thank you, Mr. President, for the work that you've done to secure not only the national security but the energy security of the region. And then thank you, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Wright, Secretary Burgum, for your leadership in this matter. Thank you.
How long would it take you, Darren, as Exxon to, if we make a deal, how long would it take you to get in there and get started?
Well, the first step, this technical team, as I talked with Secretary Wright earlier this week, we started from the beginning to put the team together so that if and when it was needed, we could hit the ground almost immediately. So we can hit the ground and within the next couple of weeks start the assessment.
Right.
And then from there, we need to understand.
That's what we want. We want speed and quality. That's what we want. Thank you, Darren. And Conoco, Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, too. And you've assembled a great team. And our congratulations as well for removing one of the terrible people in the world and bringing them to justice. It was quite amazing. I think you've given hope to the people of Venezuela again, which I think is quite remarkable. And we've been on the other end of that despot regime a long time. Our assets were expropriated. I had a little bit more hair when that happened. And you know, I think we're the largest non-sovereign credit holder in Venezuela today. So we're in a bit of a different situation, but I think your big and bold idea to use energy commerce instead of conflict is something that could make a real big difference in Venezuela. And our company certainly stands ready to help in that endeavor. Encourage you to continue to think bigger and even bolder, and we've had some discussions with your energy team about that as well. As we think about the other people that need to be in this room and in this discussion are the banks, and including probably the Exim Bank, as we think about how the debt needs to be restructured and the financing to deliver the billions of dollars that are required to restore their energy infrastructure. And I think as we think that big and bold, we need to be also thinking about even restructuring the entire Venezuelan energy system, including PDVSA. And I think if we can do that and think bold, there's an opportunity to be quick, fast, and restore the quality of what's happened in Venezuela, or what's been lost in Venezuela over the course of the last 25 years. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, and you'll get a lot of your money back. We're going to start with an even plate, though. We're not going to look at what people lost in the past, because that was their fault. That was a different president. You're going to make a lot of money, but we're not going to go back. You left a lot of money behind, I guess, huh? What number?
12 billion.
How much?
12 billion?
Well, it's a good write-off.
It's already been written off.
It's been written. All right, thank you. You'll make it back one way or the other. You're all going to do very well. I think really very well. Marco just gave me a note. Go back to Chevron. They want to discuss something. Go ahead. I'm going back to Chevron. Marco. Thank you, Marco.
Was there a question, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead, Marco. What are you saying here?
Mark, if you can update us on operations in the ground with the appropriate approvals, what you might be able to achieve in the next 12 to 18 months, give us a little view from the ground.
You bet. So today, Chevron has 3,000 employees in 4 different joint ventures in Venezuela today. And over the past 5 to 7 years, they've taken production from about 40,000 barrels a day to 240,000 barrels a day, essentially getting those facilities and that equipment up to standards that would be something that people in the room would be more accustomed to. Given the work we've done with Secretary Wright and Secretary Burgum and even Secretary Bessent, I think we have a path forward here very shortly to be able to increase our liftings from those joint ventures 100%, essentially effective immediately. We are also able to increase our production within our own disciplined investment schemes by about 50% just in the next 18 to 24 months, and that's just leveraging what's on the ground. So to Secretary Rubio's comments about phase one, this is taking the momentum of improvements we've already made there locally and building on those and creating more momentum for the people of Venezuela.
Do you think you have an advantage being there? You've been there by the skin of your teeth. It's been tough for you to be there. But do you think you have an advantage over the other people in this room by the fact that you are there?
Yeah, I think there are, Mr. President, I think there would be days where it didn't feel like an advantage, and there are days where it does feel like an advantage. But having people on the ground today that care desperately about the people of Venezuela and know how to operate the assets that are there, that is a definite advantage today.
Would you say the best locations are available, or would you say the best locations are already sort of worked, even though they're in very bad shape? The best locations for finding oil, the best locations for oil.
There are more opportunities than not, Mr. President. With 300 billion barrels of reserves and resources in country, there are lots of opportunities for many companies.
Will you be building new, or will you be using the old infrastructure that you have?
Yeah, today it's a little bit of a mix, but today it's mostly us taking the equipment of today, getting it to the standards that we are accustomed to your comments about making it how it should be today. Most of the investments that we've been making are about getting it up to our standards.
Well, I think you're going to make an investment, but you're going to get your money back very quickly, and that's part of our thing. We're going to have you get your money back fast, and then you'll give a lot to Venezuela and to the United States after that. Okay, so you'll be in good shape. Could I ask Harold Hamm to say a few words? He's been a friend of mine for a long time. Very amazing man, actually, amazing energy person.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. It's good to be here with so many dignified people, and it's after.
All right, you've been listening into that conversation between President Trump and some of his cabinet with oil executives about the next steps in Venezuela, giving us a good insight into what happens now for not just the country, but the oil industry here in the U.S., how that will be impacted. Going to get right back out to that conversation, but stick with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. We're getting out to one of the big stories of the day, of course, what happens next for Venezuela, and the most recent conversation we've had with President Donald Trump here and oil executives that gives a good insight into what happens next, both for the country and for the economy. So getting back out to that now.
A country and a lot of reserves. And so it's got its challenges, and the industry knows how to handle that. And like Darren said, you go into your eyes open and do the best you can with the team you got. So
Well, you're going to have something that they never had really here is tremendous security. You're going to be very secure, very safe, physically safe in addition to financially safe. So it's good to see you, Harold. Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything to say before we get to the press?
Cuba have to do to avoid the same fate as Venezuela? What does Cuba have to do?
Well, Cuba's in bad shape. Cuba relied on Venezuela for oil and for money. And nobody really knows what's going to happen with Cuba. They're doing very poorly. They're really third world all the way. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans. And I would say Marco fits very solidly into that category. And I might ask you to say a few words about, we were discussing it before, Cuba is a very different, they don't have energy, they don't have oil, but they would live off of the oil from Venezuela. And what they do have is very strong people and very powerful people militarily. And they would protect the people running Venezuela, and they would take in a lot of money from Venezuela. Now they don't have that. They won't be taking in any money. So, Marco, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the fundamental problem in Cuba is that it's run by incompetent people that don't know what an economy looks like, much less a functioning one. They've made a choice, and that is they would rather have political control over the people than they would have an economy that functions. And they've gotten away with it for 60-something years because they've had donors, the Soviet Union, and now most recently Venezuela. But that's now gone. So the people in control in Cuba have a choice to make. They can either have a real country with a real economy where their people can prosper, or they can continue with their failing dictatorship that's going to lead to systemic and societal collapse. That's a very stark and dramatic choice, and it's one we hope to make the right one. We don't have an interest in a destabilized Cuba, but that would be their fault because they refuse to allow the people of Cuba to have either economic or political freedom for that matter.
And you have a lot of people in this country that want to go back to Cuba and help Cuba. A lot of people have left, they came in penniless, they didn't have anything, and they've become very rich people in our country, and they want to very much go back and help Cuba. So that's something that Cuba has that a lot of other places don't have. Peter?
President Trump, thank you. I do want to ask you about Minnesota, but first, just more on topic. President Zelensky said that he was watching with the rest of the world as you made this order to go and capture Nicolas Maduro. And he said, if that's how it works with dictators, then the United States knows what to do next. Sounds like he wants you to go and capture Vladimir Putin. Would you ever order a mission to go and capture Vladimir Putin?
Well, I don't think it's going to be necessary. I think we're going to have I've always had a great relationship with him. I'm very disappointed. I settled 8 wars. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack or maybe one of the easier ones. And I don't know if you know, Peter, the last month, they lost 31,000 people, many of them Russian soldiers, and the Russian economy is doing poorly. I think we're going to end up getting it settled. I wish we could have done it quicker because a lot of people are dying, and mostly soldiers. They get hit in Kiev and they get hit a little bit here and there, and people are dying there too. But largely it's the soldier population. When you have 30,000, 31,000 soldiers dying in a period of a month, 27,000 the month before, 26,000 the month before that, that's bad stuff. So as you know, President Biden gave $350 billion to Ukraine to fight, and we would never get that back, although I did make a rare earth deal to get it back, so we will be getting it back, but shouldn't have done that. It was a bad thing to do. I will say that right now, because I was able to get NATO to up GDP from 2% to 5%, NATO's got a lot of money, and they're paying for everything. We're not losing any money. We're making a lot of money, I guess, if you think of it, because we're selling them military equipment. They're probably giving it to Ukraine. But we're selling them to NATO military equipment. We're getting full price and all of that. But that's not a big deal to me. What is a big deal is stopping a war where 30,000 people are being killed every single month.
And on Minnesota, the Vice President yesterday suggested that Renee Good, who was killed by this ICE officer, was part of a broad left-wing network. What has your team told you about this broad left-wing network? Who is in charge of it? Who's part of it? What's it called?
Well, I haven't seen the Vice President's statement, but he's generally very accurate, I hate to say it. Look, I watched that yesterday, and there were a lot of different forms to it. But there was a woman screaming, shame, 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 shame. She was a agitator, probably a paid agitator, but in my opinion, she was an agitator, a very high-level agitator, so professional. She wouldn't stop screaming. I said, this isn't a normal situation. This is a professional troublemaker. Because you heard it and I had it. Now, I will say this, the news sort of turned her down, turned her off, because you're trying to watch. She was so loud and so crazy and just not normal. When somebody sees something like that, they don't go screaming and the same words. So, I guess you could say professional, but I didn't think she did a very good job. You have agitators, and we will always be protecting ICE, and we're always going to be protecting our Border Patrol and our law enforcement.
Mr. President. Mr. President, in your conversations with these oil executives today, did you provide any security guarantees so that they can do their work safely in Venezuela? Yeah. And separately, Mr. President,
they will have those guarantees, yes.
And separately, Mr. President, I'm curious in terms of the future of Venezuela. Do you see Venezuela now led by Delcy Rodriguez as an ally of the U.S.? Is that the way that you view that country?
Well, right now they seem to be an ally, and I think it'll continue to be an ally, and we don't want to have Russia there. We don't want to have China there. And by the way, we don't want Russia or China going to Greenland, which if we don't take Greenland, you're going to have Russia or China as your next door neighbor. That's not going to happen. The white...
Mr. President, thank you. You just said that these companies would have security guarantees if they go in on the ground in Venezuela.
They will have.
And what is your plan there actually for these companies and those Americans who are going to be on the ground working for these companies?
Well, there are going to be Americans. I assume they're going to be using a lot of Americans, but they're going to be using a lot of people from Venezuela and other places, I would imagine. But I would think that mostly they'll be using Venezuelan workers. They have a lot of great workers. They have a very high unemployment rate, and they have workers that are very familiar with taking oil out of the ground. Yeah.
How long do you think the Ayatollah will be in power after what we've seen play out on the ground there? When is the U.S. going to get involved now that reports of protesters being killed on the ground?
So Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. We're watching the situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. We'll be hitting them very hard where it hurts. And that doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts. So we don't want that to happen. There have been cases like this where President Obama totally backed down. But this is something pretty incredible that's happening in Iran. It's an amazing thing to watch. They've done a bad job. They've treated their people very badly, and now they're being paid back. So let's see what happens. We're watching it. We're watching it very closely. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Do you have any comments in reaction to the recent attacks by the Syrian government alignment groups against US-backed Kurdish forces in Aleppo, Syria, which killed dozens of civilians and displacing many families? Does your administration bring peace between the Kurds and the Syrian government?
I want to see peace, yes, I do. The Kurds and the Syrian government, we get along with both, as you know very well. They have been natural enemies over the years, but we get along both, and we want to see Syria succeed. And so far, I think they are succeeding, but this is just breaking out, and we want to see that stopped. Go ahead, please.
You're meeting with the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, in a few weeks. Do you hope this meeting with Gustavo Petro marks a new chapter, a new beginning in the benefit of the U.S. and Colombia relationship?
What country?
Colombia, with the President of Colombia, Gustavo Petro.
I had a very good talk with him yesterday, and he's been very hostile. to us and to the nation and to me, called me a dictator, and lots of other things. Called Biden some terrible names, far worse than he called me. But he called yesterday through people, and he wants to meet, and that's fine with me. I've made up with people also, you know. So we're going to have a meeting with him. We had a very good conversation. The people of Colombia are incredible people. Marco would know that better than anybody because he's married to a woman from Colombia, and I don't mean Columbia University. That would be, I'm not sure. I think I like Columbia, the country, better. If you want to know the truth, the people are. Hold it. The people are great people. I look forward to meeting with them. We're going to meet in the very near future.
Would you meet the interim president of Venezuela here in the White House? Would you greet her to discuss the fate of the oil?
Yeah, well, I'm going to meet a lot of people, and we're going to meet, you know, we meet a lot of people. When you end 8 wars, you get to know a lot of people, and I think it's very important. As an example, we have over $18 trillion, think of it, $18 trillion coming into our country. A lot of that's coming in from foreign countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE and others. And I get to meet a lot of people, but I will be meeting with various representatives of Venezuela, probably pretty soon. We haven't set that up. But the relationship that we have with the people that are currently running Venezuela is very good. We also have a young lady that received the Nobel Peace Prize. She's going to come in and pay her regards to our country, really, to me, but, you know, I'm a representative of the country, nothing else. And she's coming in sometime next week, I think Tuesday or Wednesday, and we'll see how that is. But no, we're dealing with the people from Venezuela. We're dealing with them very well. I think they've been very smart in the way they've dealt with us, frankly, because that whole place could have been obliterated with one more strike, and we didn't want to do that.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you on Minneapolis, but on Venezuela and your meeting with Machado next week. If she gives you her Nobel Peace Prize, will that change your view about her running that country?
Well, I have to speak to her. I mean, I'm going to have to speak to her. She might be involved in some aspect of it. I will have to speak to her. I think it's very nice that she wants to come in, and that's what I understand the reason is, because Norway is very embarrassed by what took place. I mean, they're getting decimated. Look, whether people like Trump or don't like Trump, I settled 8 wars, big ones, some going on for 36 years, 32 years, 31 years, 28 years, 25 years, some just getting ready to start, like India and Pakistan, where already 8 jets were shot out of the air, and I got it done in rapid order without nuclear weapons. I can't think of anybody in history that should get the Nobel Prize more than me, and I don't want to be bragging, but nobody else settled wars. Obama got the Nobel Prize. He had no idea why. He still has no idea. He walks around and he says, I got the Nobel Prize. Why did he get a Nobel Prize? He got it almost immediately upon attaining office, and he didn't do anything, and he was a bad president. So, I mean, you should get the Nobel Prize for every war you stopped. These were major wars. These were wars that nobody thought could be stopped. President Putin called me and he said about 2 of the wars that he's been trying to stop them for 10 years. He wasn't able to do it. He couldn't believe it. So in theory, you should get the Nobel Prize for every war you stopped. Every one of them was major. But I don't care about that. What I care about is saving lives. I've saved tens of millions of lives. You know, the Prime Minister of Pakistan came here and he made a very public statement. He said that President Trump saved minimum 10 million lives having to do with Pakistan and India, and that was going to be raging. So, you know, but I'm honored that she's coming here. I look forward to meeting her, yes. Go ahead.
On Minneapolis, Mr. President, I have a follow-up for you.
The state officials there have said that the FBI is not sharing evidence with them. Typically, they would...
You've been listening in to President Trump speaking to oil executives, but we're coming on the air with some breaking news. A live picture here from the scene where a pedestrian was killed in a train crash. This is in South Charlotte. As I said, this is live, and this is information just coming into our newsroom, so our camera will be moving around as they get shots of this still very active scene here. As I said, a pedestrian has died in a train crash. This is in the 5700 block of Old Pineville Road. We don't have any other details yet, but as you could see from that initial shot and now this one as well, we've got medic on scene. That medic is the one to confirm the pedestrian deceased. You've got multiple fire crews here, multiple officials of different agencies as they all respond to this. Again, Old Pineville Road, that's in the just south of Charlotte, South Charlotte area. And so definitely a busy area. So you take caution, of course, avoid the area as officials try and figure out what happened here. You can see vehicles moving around, fire repositioning themselves, so we'll probably have to move our camera to a different shot. So just a heads up that this is coming in live, so this is all developing as we get this information. But it's really heartbreaking news, and we will continue to hopefully get some updates here on what happened. So we're taking a quick break, but we're going to hit this again throughout our next couple minutes here as we're in Live Impact News, as we get more updates hopefully very soon. Stick with us. Welcome back to Live Impact News, continuing to follow this breaking news out of South Charlotte off Old Pineville Road. This is the scene now where a pedestrian was hit and killed after a train crash. So this is really obviously shocking information. This is not a usual situation. So we are still getting this information in as I speak. You can see probably more than a dozen in total official vehicles here. We got a whole fire truck, medic, of course, on scene. Medic is the one to confirm that the pedestrian was killed in this incident. Again, this is the 5700 block of Old Pineville Road, and we don't have any details at this point about what led up to this, what happened here, who the suspect is, or not the suspect, excuse me, the victim here is, and just a lot of questions, of course, but obviously heartbreaking situation. You can see some of the officials there walking around, investigating. I'm sure a situation like this will take some time to figure out. So, of course, avoid this area if you can while investigators continue their work and while medic and fire crews and police are on scene helping out here as much as they can. While we wait to get some more information there, as I mentioned, our crews are on scene. We want to get some other local news. So, of course, Helene, that is still at top of mind for a lot of people. Governor Josh Stein was in Polk County today speaking with people about what's still needed. Of course, it's a lot. And he got a chance to speak with reporters about recovery thus far and what's still needed in terms of funding, which, again, is a lot.
Here today with Rick and Lori. They're homeowners here in Polk County. Meg Lebeck is with the Housing Assistance Corporation. And they just showed me the work that was done on their home. We're not far from the river. You can't see in the picture, but the Green River's just down the hill here. And it came up right up to their foundation and caused a lot of damage underneath the home. And this is a story of grit. their grit. They were in there doing the work. But then it was also partnership with nonprofits like the Housing Assistance Corporation. The state has given a few $100,000 to the Housing Assistance Corporation as part of a $16 million investment in about 16 different nonprofits like HAC. There's another 15 or 16 million that's yet to come. That notice of application went out in December, so we're going to put more money out because we know that these nonprofits are really agile. They didn't need their whole house rebuilt here, but they had a few systems that were severely damaged and they needed some help. And it was the nonprofit with volunteers, with their hard labor. The house is now back up and running. So this is how it's going to take. We're going to need to work together. The government, nonprofits, the residents, we all have to work together to try to get Western North Carolina back on their feet. From the state's perspective, we have a housing program too. It's called Renew North Carolina, Renew NC. The application deadline is the end of this month, January 31. It had been the end of last year. We extended it because we've been getting a lot of applicants. More than 7,000 homeowners like Rick and Lori have applied for assistance from this program, and we want more people to apply. We want to help as many folks who are eligible to get the help from the government as they possibly can. We've started moving homes through that process. We've done either a couple dozen are finished or in construction, and there's about 160 that are 1 or 2 steps away from getting under construction. So there's about to be a whole bunch more housing being addressed through the Renew NC program. But these nonprofits, they're just more agile than government is, and that's why having this partnership really helps us to make an impact on people's lives. We need more help from the federal government. Typically, after a major storm like Hurricane Helene, the federal government will give 40 or 50% of the damages to the affected state to help them get back on their feet. Some states have gotten upwards of 70, 80% of the damages. Our damages were $60 billion here in North Carolina. We've received 11% of that from the federal government. And we will be grateful for every dollar we get from our federal partners, but honestly, we need more. And I'm going to be going to Washington next week to continue to press that case. We are happy to take any questions.
There's been almost no movement since October on the $13 billion or so you guys have requested. What's going to be different when you go up next week in Washington?
Well, all I know is when you're pushing a heavy object, it doesn't happen all at once. You got to put your shoulder to it and push. You got to put your shoulder to it and push, and eventually you see progress. And so we're going up there and we're going to continue to work with our federal partners. Federal government has to appreciate the extent of the damage here and just make sure that we in Western North Carolina get our fair share. Other states that were really damaged, whether it was the Gulf states from Katrina or New York, New Jersey, Connecticut with Hurricane Sandy, our hearts went out to those people when they experienced that kind of pain, and the federal government came to their aid. We need the federal government to come to our aid here in North Carolina.
Governor, can you talk about the issues of politics that inevitably play a part in negotiating for money? You're a Democrat, the Republicans hold the power. President Trump has been here multiple times saying that he and his colleagues will help. What would you say to Republicans in the fact that we're talking about billions of dollars that you're still asking for? It seems like it's like almost a rinse and repeat every time you come and speak asking for funds.
Yeah, well, everybody cares about the folks who live here. And what we have to do is just make sure that we transform that care into action. And that's what I'm going to go up to Washington and press our case. I know that the congressional delegation is supportive of making sure that we're doing everything we can to get the money that Western North Carolina needs. And as I said, we're going to keep making this case until action occurs.
Just a follow-up question. Obviously, you have been doing a lot of touring, showing good stories, positive stories. There are hundreds of people, homeowners, families, who have contacted, some of them WLOS and I'm sure other TV stations that are covering this, that say they're not getting the help. Have you considered, or your staff considered, talking with these people and having some type of press tour to highlight people that are waiting and are seeing no end in sight for help.
Yeah, none of this moves as fast as it should or as fast as people need. This Renew NC program, the housing program that people can still apply for today, North Carolina, we got that program up and running faster than any state impacted by Helene, faster than any state impacted by a major hurricane in over a decade. So we are moving with urgency, but it's never going to be fast enough. And so we're going to continue doing everything we can to get the money that we receive, whether it's from the federal government or state government, out the door as quickly and effectively as we can.
With the Renew NC program, do you guys have all the hundreds of millions from HUD, or is it a similar reimbursement program?
Yeah, the program I was saying that we got up and running, it's the Renew NC program, and it's federally funded. That was part of the appropriation that Congress did at the end of 2024. That's the only money that has been appropriated for storm recovery. And the CDBG DR, Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery, those funds were allocated by HUD earlier this year. We've put in our action plan, it was approved. That was what was done faster than any other state impacted by Helene, and the total is about $1.4 billion coming to North Carolina. So we are getting that money out the door. We are writing checks to contractors doing work across the region as we speak.
We've heard from homeowners who have applied for different programs like the Hazard Mitigation Project.
That's right.
And it's still just waiting in D.C. What do you say about, do you know where projects like that are on the timeline?
I share the frustration of homeowners. There are a lot of homeowners who weren't as fortunate as Rick and Lori. Their houses, up above the river. There are a lot of homes that were right beside the river and they were washed away. A lot of those people are still paying mortgages on a home that does not even exist. And so there is a program that exists to help those people. It will do a buyout of their property at the value of what the house had been so that they can then take those resources, pay off their mortgage, and start their life somewhere a little bit up the hill. We have submitted as a state about 560 applications of homeowners just like that to FEMA and to Homeland Security, and they have not approved a single one. So these homeowners are just stuck in Neverworld where they still have a mortgage to pay, they don't have a home, and they've raised their hand and said, we want to get out of the flood zone. We don't want to rebuild in a flood zone. And we have to do better. The federal government has to do better.
Excuse me, what has FEMA accomplished?
FEMA has been a partner in many ways on many issues. That's not to say FEMA is perfect by any means. They have been slow to get reimbursements to local governments. A lot of times what FEMA will do is they'll say, a local government will say, we have a lot of debris that we have to get removed, or we have a water system that we need repaired, and they'll give them the approval. Then the local government will do that work, but it costs a lot of money. FEMA exists to reimburse that money, and that process of reimbursement for public assistance has not been as fast as I wish that it were. On the hazard mitigation program, the one that we were just talking about, that's also a FEMA project, a FEMA responsibility. They haven't done anything. So we want more.
I have nothing good to say about FEMA. I mean, they treated us like we were, I don't know, third-class citizens. Or, I mean, they had put a FEMA trailer, and then they kept coming and wanting us to leave. Said everything was done, we could leave, but everything wasn't done. And I was told I could buy it. I called your office, and you give me a number, and I think Brett Howard refused, to let me buy it.
Well, we can have a conversation to understand better than that, better about that, because that's not the way it should work. It's certainly not appropriate.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I just have nothing good to say about FEMA.
Governor, could you speak to specifically what elected officials you have talked with in Washington so far. Senator Tom Tillis, I believe, has been spearheading work to try to clear some kind of logjam with the hazard mitigation. Are you working with them? Are you going into meetings? Do they have access to President Trump? I mean, at the end of the day, it's perhaps individuals that could help move the needle on some of this. And I know these tours, I don't know if you're making any headway to get money through doing what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I have regular communications with our congressional delegation. I talked to a couple congressmen just on the travel up here today. I talked to U.S. Senator yesterday.
Tillis?
It was Bud. And they've been working very hard to get FEMA to reimburse our local governments for the work that they've already been done, that FEMA, by the way, had approved that they do. And so I appreciate the focus of the congressional delegation. So there are two things. There's one is making sure that the money that has previously been appropriated gets through and out the door and back into communities where it is desperately needed. The second is making sure that we have enough resources to tackle this incredibly massive exercise of rebuilding, and that's where I need everybody to put their shoulder to the wheel. We need more financial assistance from the federal government.
Any last questions? Why do you feel you have to say this over and over and over again and nothing's changed? I mean, I think people at home are just questioning, why? Why is this?
Government is a very difficult machine to move forward. And so we all have to put our shoulders to the wheel. That means that I got to use my voice and go to Washington and ask them to do what they need to do. But everyone watching this, they need to call their representative and encourage them to do what we know they need to do, which is to make sure that North Carolina gets its fair share, that we get enough money to help this area get back on its feet, because we want it to happen as quickly as possible.
That was Governor Josh Stein earlier today in Polk County talking about Helene recovery, getting questions from reporters about what's next. Of course, a lot still left to do in terms of recovery and getting funding to finish that recovery. Taking another quick break, but we'll be back here in 2 minutes. Stick with us. Welcome back to Live Impact News. We want to play that. Sorry, something's playing for my phone right now. We want to hit that breaking news again one more time. This is a live look This is off Old Pineville Road in South Charlotte. One person was hit and killed by a freight train. Now, just to be clear at this point, it does not seem, although it is close to the Tyvola light rail station, it does not seem to be related to that at all. No CATS vehicles involved. I know there was some confusion about that, but this is obviously heartbreaking no matter what. You can see still at this point, about an hour after that initial call came in, dozens of crews there. I imagine they will be there for the foreseeable future as they investigate this scene. So we're going to keep our crews there on scene to try and also figure out what's happened here. Anytime you have a train or transit involved in a crash like this, of course, there's going to be a lot of questions about how it happened in the first place. So we will continue to follow this very closely, and we'll have more updates on our newscast at 11. For now, we want to get back to the big national story of the day, which is, of course, Venezuela. You heard earlier from President Donald Trump and Vice President Vance talking to oil executives about what this means for the American oil economy. We also got a chance to hear from some Congress people who are, of course, on the other side of this argument. So take a listen.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Congressman Adriano Espaillat, chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Yesterday, the caucus adopted an official position regarding Venezuela. That is quite an accomplishment, considering that we have within the caucus the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and the co-chair of the Blue Dogs. So ideologically, we have members from all over the spectrum, and yet we were able to reach a consensus and adopt an official position for the caucus regarding Venezuela. This is important because as members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, we probably know this issue better than anybody else in Congress. It impacts our districts with the migration of Venezuelans throughout the country. It's also historically an issue that we can all identify with, and an issue that we know really well. In fact, we feel very strongly that our opinion is valuable for the caucus, the Democratic caucus, and Congress to really take a deep dive and address this pending matter. Let us first make two things clear. First one is that Nicolas Maduro was not a legitimate president of Venezuela. We know what happened during the elections. The entire world, the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and even the Vatican knew exactly what occurred in the past elections. So that is one truth. The other truth is that the President of the United States must come before Congress before ordering a military engagement to another country. Any president of any party has to do that. So these two truths are ones that we adopted yesterday, and we ensure that there is a roadmap to addressing this crisis. And now that Nicolas Maduro is sort of like in the rear view mirror, we crafted policies that support a free and democratic future for Venezuela, and policies that return to the truth that a president must come before Congress before entering any conflict in any part of the world. That is enshrined in our Constitution. CHC adopted a forward-looking position paper on Venezuela. These are the principles that should guide our future in engaging this country. Remember, as I said earlier, CHC is ideologically diverse. And so some of the things that we agreed on was, for example, to ensure that there is no future war conflict unless the president comes before Congress and makes his or her case as to why we should be there. The Venezuelan government, which by the way continues to be the allies of Nicolas Maduro, must free political prisoners. Now, we know, and we've heard, that right now, as we speak, they're still tracking down, harassing, and putting in jail many civil society leaders. That government must respect freedom of opinion and freedom of the press. It is important that that is reinstated. In addition to that, we feel very strongly that the Venezuelan people must have free and reliable elections in the near future to reestablish their leadership and their confidence in democracy. These are some of the positions that we adopted yesterday, but we have with us folks like the ranking member of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee of Foreign Affairs, and he is someone that has been working with these issues in Latin America and the Caribbean for a good long time. So I would like to introduce Congressman Joaquin Castro.
All right. Thank you all. Good morning. I'm Congressman Joaquin Castro and proud to represent my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, and also serve as a ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the subcommittee for the Western Hemisphere. And about a week ago, Donald Trump invaded Venezuela unconstitutionally, illegally, and before that had spent months building up the military in the Caribbean. When we were briefed in December, we asked point blank, I asked specifically of Secretary Rubio, whether the administration would come to Congress to ask for authorization for any kind of land strikes or land invasion. He said at the time that there were no plans to do so, and that they would come to Congress for anything that required an AUMF. They obviously did not. I have great concerns for both the American people and the Venezuelan people. For the American people, Donald Trump, in this illegal invasion, has now said that he's going to run Venezuela from Washington, D.C., I suppose. He's using the language of forever war. Our nation spent 20 years, more or less, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it cost our country trillions of dollars. The president has now said that beyond Venezuela, that he may take over Greenland, may take military action in Colombia, in Mexico, and a few other countries. Nobody in 2024 supported a presidential candidate who said that they would invade 3 or 4 or 5 countries. This is an especially important and thorny issue in Latin America because of the United States' history in Latin America. During the Cold War, the United States treated every right-wing leader as a friend and every left-wing leader as a foe. And because of that, we supported leaders who abused their people and who abused human rights. We supported coups. We supported, for example, Pinochet in Chile, whose government killed thousands of people and disappeared many others. And other leaders in Latin America who also disappeared their people. Their families never learned their fates or what happened to them. Donald Trump is trying to take us back to that era when he talks about the Donroe Doctrine, which is a play on the Monroe Doctrine, this idea that the United States is going to go dominate Latin America. That's what it meant before. Supporting right-wing leaders, supporting coups, supporting leaders who abused their people, who murdered their people, who disappeared their people. And it led to incredible destabilization of these countries and civil wars and mass migration. And that's part of the reason that you had so many folks come to the United States from places like Central America and South America, not just the United States, but migrate to other countries as well. So when we hear Donald Trump talk about this kind of 21st century imperialism, that's what's at stake, is a destabilization and a migration. Now, throughout this, we have seen that there are many Venezuelans and Venezuelan Americans who are quite happy that Nicolas Maduro is no longer in power. And they're right to be happy, and we don't blame them at all. We understand. Nicolas Maduro was not a good leader. Nicolas Maduro abused his people. Nicolas Maduro did not win the last presidential election. But Nicolas Maduro simply being gone doesn't guarantee the safety, the security, or a democratic society in Venezuela. And my deep concern right now is that Donald Trump's foreign policy is make Trump rich. That he's acting not in the best interest of the American people or even the Venezuelan people, but in the best interest of Donald Trump, in an attempt to enrich a small circle of cronies and potentially family members. And at this point, based on what he's done around the world, I wouldn't be surprised if 5 or 10 years from now, we see that people who are close to Donald Trump, his cronies, have made millions and billions of dollars off of the industries in Latin America and other countries that Donald Trump may try to invade. Unfortunately, that's where we are right now in the United States of America. So we are here today to say that the American people don't want any more war in Venezuela. They don't want a war with Mexico or Colombia or Greenland. And that at a minimum, the president must come to Congress for any authorization for any military action in Venezuela at the moment, and of course, for military action in the future. With that, I'd like to introduce my great colleague, also from the state of Texas, Sylvia Garcia.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you to Congressional Hispanic Caucus for putting this thing together. And I think we can all agree on one thing. Nicolas Maduro was a brutal dictator. His regime was illegitimate, no questions about that. We are glad that Maduro is gone, but the real question now is, where is all this going? He's talking about running Venezuela for years. He was asked in a New York Times interview that I heard this morning on a podcast, you know, how long will it be? And he just said, as long as it takes. He was never specific. Then they asked him, well, what guides you? You know, is it international law, and he said, no, it's my own morality. Which just means he doesn't feel like he has to answer to anyone but to himself. He is openly discussing oil interests to access Venezuela's reserves. This has always been about the oil. To me, this does not sound like someone who has really thought things through or is really thinking about law enforcement, as they say. This is about building an empire for himself, his family, and his cronies. And while the White House is focused on running another country, Americans are running out of money here at home. Healthcare costs are out of control. Child care costs are out of control. Rent is rising. Grocery bills are going up. Families need relief. But what does this administration focus on instead? Another costly conflict nobody wants except Trump's billionaire buddies who asked for it. Imagine he called his billionaire buddies in the oil and gas industry to give them a heads up that he was doing this, but not the elected members of Congress. A president who ignores Congress, laws, and most importantly, the will of the American people, in my mind, is a dictator. The world is watching. Again, they're asking, where is all this going? Who will be next? Our allies are raising alarms that this type of unilateral use of force is setting a very dangerous precedent. So today I stand with the thousands of Venezuelans in my district, and I'm always mindful that one of our suburbs, Katy, is no longer called Katy, it's actually called Katiezuela, because there are so many Venezuelans in Katy. This administration cannot claim to protect Venezuelans on one hand and then turn around to rescind TPS status for hundreds of thousands seeking asylum and protection. TPS status was fought for and established to offer relief to Venezuela's severe political, economic, and humanitarian crisis. And these people did the right thing.
right, you've been listening in to a press conference earlier with some congressional leaders discussing the situation in Venezuela. You also heard in this newscast from President Donald Trump speaking with oil executives in the U.S. about what this means for the economy. So, of course, lots of questions there. Some things that we'll continue to address in our newscast at 11 o'clock. But, of course, the big breaking news being a person was hit and killed by a train in South Charlotte. So stick with us for that newscast at 11. That's where you get all the updates you need.